Senator Ortman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. There have been many attempts to work on judicial reform here at the state capitol over the last couple of years, and I have looked at them skeptically. I think we have to be very careful as legislators not to encroach upon the constitutional powers of our courts. And in some of these bills, I've seen what I thought or feared might be an encroachment upon the judicial branch. And so I went to work on an amendment that I thought would be a positive way of considering judicial reform with a very clear designation of the authority in the legislative branch. And so if you look at our Constitution, Article 6, Section 9 authorizes the legislative branch to provide for the retirement, removal, or other discipline of any judge who is disabled, incompetent, or guilty of conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice. In Article 8, Section 1, there's also the provision for impeachment of judges. And in the impeachment powers, the House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment. All impeachments shall be tried by the Senate. And so our Constitution does provide for the checks and balances for the legislature to step in the case that there is some kind of a problem with a judge. We have the Judicial Standards Board, and I think they do a very good job. I'm not aware of any impeachment or trial of a judge in the state of Minnesota, and I am hopeful that that will never happen, and I don't foresee that it will happen. I hope we never have the need for that. However, I do think that we should have a process in law by which, if there is a reason to do that, that we have a way to exercise these very important constitutional powers. And so the A2 amendment was prepared with that in mind. I've heard from many constituents, maybe some of you have as well, that when somebody files an ethics complaint against a judge, it goes to the Judicial Standards Board and then it's never heard of again, and people don't have confidence in that process. So this would allow someone who has a complaint on judicial ethics, after they have exhausted all remedies in the Judicial Standards Board, to then bring a complaint to our joint legislative committee, which would be our Senate Ethics Committee, joined together with the House Ethics Committee, and they would act together to consider any kind of ethical complaint against a judge after the Judicial Standards Board has been convened and made its decision. If a complainant is still unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the result, they can bring it to this joint commission. That commission then would have several options. First of all, it can hear the complaint in an executive session in private. It can make a decision to send the complaint back to the Judicial Standards Board for further consideration, or it can decide at that point to have a public hearing on whether or not there are reasons to proceed. It then authorizes this group to meet in public or in private if there's private data, or to protect some of the confidential information that our judges would be interested in protecting. And then it authorizes a process to recommend impeachment proceedings if all of that warrants further proceedings. So, Mr. Chair and members, the reason I'm offering this now is intended not to take a vote. I'm hopeful that we'll have an informational hearing later, but I wanted to lay this out for public consideration and conversation over the next several months. Hopefully we can come back in our next legislative session and consider this as a proposal after full and due consideration and conversation, Mr. Chair.
Senator Ortman, you made a comment about information that judges would be interested in protecting. Is that what you meant as part of the deliberations that a legislative commission would be involved in?
Well, Mr. Chair, the Section 3 is very clear in the amendment about what information can be kept confidential, and we know that there are some open meeting law requirements, but we also have the power as the legislature to change those a little bit here. And so Section 3, it says, if you look at subdivision 3B, the committee shall close all or a portion of a meeting to discuss health records or other information relating to the medical condition of a judge, or to discuss information that is not accessible to the public. And I think that's important. We're following Chapter 13 with that, and that is my intention. But I do think we need a broader conversation. We need to include the judges. We need to include the general public in this conversation.